Hello there, it is Nick Zengel. Happy Sunday, coming to you live from California for this recap and react to episode 15 of season 11 of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, titled The Dinner Party from Hell Part 2. Since this is both a recap and a reaction from you and me, I will remind you that there are timestamps in the description for you if you'd like to only see the recap portion or just my reaction or just the live chat reactions of me reading them. Now, since the last episode, I have broken it down even more in the timestamps than just the blocks. So hopefully that helps you out if you want to come back and revisit some of my comments or come back and just watch certain parts. Then that is perfectly cool with me, and that makes it a lot easier for you as well. So without further ado, let's jump right in on this Sunday to the first live stream of the day. There's going to be two today, one catching up from 2 weeks ago, and then this one, or the one after this, which is going to be the most recent episode. Then we'll be all caught up as we head into the end of the season. So this episode, let me get my pictures up, hold on. This episode starts with Dorit trying on her wedding dress design samples for her husband PK. We get a flashback to, in this scene, the different areas of fashion we've seen Dorit design in and have lines for over the years as she has been on the show. And we do this and we see Dorit is modeling, PK is sharing ideas for naming each dress and each look. And this brings up how involved PK is in Dorit's business, where Dorit actually gives him a lot of credit for his input, despite Dorit acknowledging how people may take PK's input as him kind of stepping on her toes into her business. But Dorit reminds us that she is still the boss at the end of the day. Now, this prompts the couple to sit down and talk about marriage in general because they're looking at wedding dresses, and PK says that the last one that she tried on, which is the one you see in this picture as her sitting down, would be the one that he would see her in walking down the aisle should they walk down the aisle again, leading Dorit to respond with, you know what, let's not tempt fate. We got it right the first time, in reference to renewing of vows. I'll give my thoughts on renewing vows in a few seconds. But PK then says to his wife, let's lose that conspiracy theory about renewing your vows ending a marriage, rather than doing things that are inappropriate in your marriage, like infidelity and the like, to end your marriage. Now, Dorit then says she thinks of Erika in this situation when they're talking because we now know Tom was cheating on her all those years with many women. And PK says, without question, Tom is a bad guy, leading to PK assuring in the general thing about oversharing and sharing your personal life and what's in your marriage with your friends. PK assures everyone that he is the sharer and the talker out of them two in the marriage. But Dorit also says, of course, contrary to popular belief and what the other girls have been saying over the years about her, and in her confessional, Dorit kind of admits that the reason she talks so much around the other girls is because at home, her husband never shuts up. And that is where this scene ends. But I see you all popping in here, so make sure to say hello as you're in here. But on that note, Dorit sharing why she talks so much around the women makes sense to me, because I've actually had this theory with some people I know in my real life, where around me they will not be quiet, like they will not shut up, not even let me get in a word in edgewise. And I've always wondered if this was part of the reason, was because maybe at home their spouse talks a lot, or maybe not in Dorit's case, but in the people I know in my real life, they may not have a lot in common outside of just being married, or maybe they lost touch of certain things, and so that could also be another reason. But although it is a reason that someone may be talking a lot in real life when you know them, it can still be very annoying for the recipient of all that talking. So another thing I liked about this scene is I think it shows how much of a partnership PK and Dorit really are. And from what I've seen, it appears good marriages are just that. And I think it also shows how much Dorit and PK respect each other's opinions, and it appears to be working for them. So good for them. As far as my thoughts on renewing vows in general, I always thought this, and many people that are married in my real life I know have the same opinion as me, which is that you shouldn't need to renew your vows if they meant something the first time, and they aren't supposed to have an expiration date outside of death, meaning till death do us part. And maybe the only exception I would consider is if you're adding to the vows, meaning you want to add some things that came along the way. I know also many renew vows on certain milestone anniversaries, but I just think, why can't you just have a party to celebrate instead, or show how far you've come, or how your vows have been tested, and share stories and reflect on how strong you've become and how those vows have stood the test of time. But let me know what you think of renewing vows in general in the live chat, which I will be checking in a few minutes after we go through this scene. So now we are at Sutton's new house that is under construction with Kyle, who is getting a tour of the construction updates of this 6,000 square foot, 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms house. And as Sutton is showing Kyle the kitchen, as you see here, Kyle is joking, saying, looks like I'm going to be making a lot of money off of you, implying that it looks like it's a long way from being done, and Sutton is going to be renting Kyle's old house for a while now, which obviously Kyle gets the money from, so I thought that was pretty funny. But Sutton, in her confessional, is then reflecting on how far she has come since her divorce with this new house, this new group of friends, and as a single person who is ready to turn the page and start new chapters in her house, hopefully until she can stay there as long as her kids, like she said, when her kids are out of the house and on their own, she'll be in this house. But now we are in the backyard, and this is where things start getting interesting in this episode, because Kyle and Sutton are catching up, where Sutton is asking how are Kyle and Mauricio going to celebrate their 25-year anniversary. Kyle responds with the kids out of the house and dinner at home. Kyle then asks how Sutton is doing post Rinna Beauty launch party, where she says that she has been trying to use kid gloves with Erika up to this point in addressing her concerns with her reputation and legalities of this regarding Erika and what she's going through. But when that finger of hers, meaning Erika's finger, was pointing at Little Miss Small Town, that phrase was accompanied with it, Sutton realized, as she said, Erika maybe isn't as fragile as she thought. Now, in her confessional, Sutton is sharing how she feels betrayed by Erika after they recently bonded over the divorce, because Sutton has been divorced recently and then Erika now is going through one. And in her confessional shares, she still doesn't think Erika knew the law firm dealing details, but believes Tom basically told her at home, the jig is up, find your independence, our life is over, basically. Now back with Kyle, Sutton shares she thinks Erika is lying about the car accident story, and she doesn't deal with liars. And so that is kind of where things took a turn for Sutton regarding Erika. Now, Kyle in her confessional says she thinks Erika is careful and that the stories don't add up because she was married to a lawyer for so long, and Erika, maybe as a result of that, was taught not to really trust that many people because of what Tom might have been advising her to do. Now, Sutton also in her confessionals shares or adds again that she thinks Erika is telling stories with new details to help Tom's defense. Now, Sutton also says to Kyle in this scene, after being asked, that she thinks it is possible the divorce is a sham and looks fishy. Now, Sutton says in her confessional again, she thinks Erika is quote-unquote acting like she is totally innocent, and Sutton believes Erika made a deal with the devil, and the devil always comes knocking. Now, give me one sec. Actually, the scene will end in a second, and then I'm going to take a sip of water, and then I'll get my thoughts, and then your chats. So the scene ends with Kyle saying to Sutton in the backyard, if Erika turns out to be someone completely different than she thought, then she's going to be eating crow, and they will both have to see which one of them is actually wrong in the situation, which one is right, because they seem to be having two different opinions. And Sutton says she needs to confront Erika once again on this, which we will see towards the end of the episode. Let me take a quick sip of water, and then I will get to my thoughts and then yours. All right, we're back. So in this scene, I personally can tell Sutton is being genuine in expressing herself. And up to this point, I think she's been pretty truthful in trying to address Erika while trying to be as careful as possible, because she doesn't seem to be afraid to stand alone on this. But I also don't blame her for now being at the point where she's getting a little bit angry with what is happening, both with Erika's reaction to her and the other girls being a little bit two-faced with her. But we'll have to see how that plays out. But I also wonder how long Kyle and Sutton's relationship will stay this way, because Kyle keeps saying she is not 100% on Erika's side, but to Erika's face isn't really showing that. And I can imagine Sutton will only put up for that with that for so long. So we'll have to see what's going on there. Let me check the chat to see who's here. Looks like everything is good in the chat, so I'm going to keep going. All right. So we are now at Crystal's house where she is hosting Erika, Garcelle, and Kathy for a meal with duck, pork, fish, and pancakes, which is kind of a traditional meal for Chinese meal for Crystal. And Erika is asking where her kids are, and we learn that Rob, who is Crystal's husband, took them out for the night and gives Erika a chance to ask Crystal more about her kids. And she's sharing how they actually have a tutor to learn Chinese because she wants them to keep their Chinese culture as part of their American life. Now, Kathy arrives late because she is prepping for her having the girls over to her house in a few days. Garcelle arrives to a feast of food that looks delicious, with Kathy not being able to use the chopsticks. Garcelle then says she likes this small group as they reflect on the Rinna beauty party, in particular comments on Dorit talking too much. Kathy and Dorit, Kathy and Erika comfort Garcelle in saying that a lot of people have said what Garcelle has said to Dorit, and Erika thinks that they can move past this. It doesn't seem like it's too deep of a problem. Now, Garcelle also shares how her and Erika are similar in that they are perceived by others as this tough exterior, but on the inside they can be really the most sensitive people. So they're kind of trying to ease Garcelle's mind about what happened at the Rinna beauty launch party with her and Garcelle. Now, Erika then uses this as a way to air her grievances with Sutton, who Sutton is worried about her reputation in association with Erika, and Erika says that she is disappointed with Sutton, and it's kind of the same idea as what Sutton was sharing earlier with Kyle about being disappointed, and they thought they had a bond, and now it seems to be kind of broken. But Kathy then stands up for both Sutton and Erika by saying, "I have good news and bad news. Nobody actually cares what you have to say." And I thought that was an interesting thing from Kathy, considering normally she tries to balance things out, but really this time she was being brutally honest. But referring to Sutton worried about her life at the country club in Augusta, Kathy says she's from a more conservative background, and then adds that everyone has skeletons in their closet. Her family's, Kathy Hilton's, just happen to all be out there. Now, at the table, Erika says it was disturbing to hear Sutton, who is allegedly cultured and well-traveled, say what she said about Erika, where in her confessional she says if Kathy doesn't have anything to worry about, referring to Erika, then Sutton Stracke shouldn't either. I'll have my thoughts on that comment in a second. But Erika then says she is a member of the same country club as Sutton, but has never heard of her before, prompting a "really?" from Garcelle, and Crystal chiming in saying yes, the same thing to Erika, saying I have never heard of her either, and kind of laughing kind of dismissingly, where then Garcelle calls out kind of the elitist comment that is by the girls at the table, meaning Erika and Crystal, in her confessional, confirming what we said in the beginning of the season about Crystal's kind of mean girl elitist tendency, or that side of her, when in the first episode she said if she didn't know you, then you must not be worth knowing, as she was meeting all the girls for the first time at Dorit's house. So I'm with Garcelle on this one, and it being off-putting to say, because just because you didn't know someone, that doesn't mean that they're no one you should know, or that they're nobody. And now they know Sutton, so I guess she is worth knowing because you know her now. Anyways, Garcelle makes a great point after Crystal says if Sutton had pulled that with another group, she'd be back in Augusta, meaning they'd kick her out of town, by saying she didn't know Crystal before. But anyways, Garcelle also says, well, Crystal, I didn't know you before. I knew your husband, but I didn't know you. And so there's that. I'm sure Crystal wouldn't like to be receiving what she puts out there anyway, so we'll just move on. But the conversation then goes toward trying to explain Sutton's behavior, to which Crystal thinks Sutton is socially awkward. She said this before. She's saying it again. She said it to Sutton's face. Now she's repeating it to her friend, and how she misses some of the social cues and is insecure. This part, I think Crystal might be actually projecting a little bit here, but we'll move on. And Garcelle as Sutton's close friend is defending Sutton as quirky and just finding her voice again after being divorced and now being on her own, to which Crystal says, well, your voice is awkward. And the scene ends with Garcelle in her confessional wondering why the girls are saying this to her out of all the girls, knowing that Garcelle is on Team Sutton. So I think they really want Sutton to hear this, but it is a lot easier to say it to someone who can be the messenger rather than bringing it up to Sutton in front of everyone, creating more problems for the group, which they already have enough problems as a whole when they get together. So my thoughts on this. So the beginning part of this scene, when Crystal was sharing more about her kids being raised as Chinese American, to me, that is why America is great. I know people question me a lot. I'm like, why do you think America's that great? I think this is a great example of that, because you can choose to hold on to your culture of where you came from, however many generations back that is, in addition to embracing the new culture as an American, where we all have different cultures, but we come together as one American people. And again, I enjoy seeing that side of Crystal and her family, so I hope they keep showing that with everyone, and soon we'll see more from other girls in their culture. But on the Erika front of her problems with Sutton, you cannot convince me that Erika would not be worried about how these allegations against someone else in the group and their spouse would affect her and Tom. I believe if the roles were reversed, Erika would be a little worried too, because Tom had a good reputation up to this point until everything kind of came out about him. But to Erika's point about Kathy not being worried, so Sutton shouldn't worry. The reason Erika is saying Kathy shouldn't be worried is the reason Sutton should be worried, because the Hiltons aren't going anywhere from a social standpoint, from a business perspective, whereas Sutton is still finding her footing, as she has her connections that she got societally during her marriage to survive on her own post-divorce, just like you, Erika, when you had just left Tom before all the things started coming out with a lot of the allegations on the law firm, and you were implicated before that. You only had your name and what you built during the marriage in those latter years for you to be able to be on your own. So I think Erika isn't really thinking this through, and is kind of, like Sutton was saying earlier, they were friends at the beginning of the season. They bonded over a lot, and they could have bonded even more over this. But Erika's clearly kind of feeling like back in the corner or in survival mode, so she's probably not really thinking very clear at this point. Let me check your chat. I see some of you in here. All right, let's see. Nastia is here. Thank you so much for being here on this Sunday. We have 2 lives in a row, so I'm very excited to catch up on this before the week starts. So Nastia says that dinner lunch was one of the most catty and mean-spirited scenes this season. Poor Sutton having to watch that. Shame on Crystal. Her hatred for Sutton blinds her. I am with you on that. I thought I was kind of liking Crystal a little better because I thought her and Sutton kind of worked through their stuff, but apparently not. So we will see kind of what happens as a result of that. I did agree with what Kathy was saying, although it's not something I was expecting Kathy to say, because usually she's a little more nicer. But I mean, I think she was being honest. Like, at some point, it's kind of like, how important is my opinion or whatnot? So kind of a reality check coming from Kathy Hilton, which is interesting. But I think Erika's getting this one wrong, and I think Crystal is showing her mean girl elitist side, and I think Garcelle is being a really good friend by defending her friend behind her back when other girls are trying to say some mean stuff. So I think Garcelle's doing a great job. All right, let's move on to the next part, which is Kyle and Mauricio are now celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary, as Mauricio sets up this candlelit dinner with the roses in their backyard after he kind of told his business people, stop talking to me, I'm celebrating my anniversary for the night. So Kyle and him are reflecting on their marriage moments that we've seen over the years on the show. They're showing a montage, and they're having drinks, as you see here, and caviar, as Kyle is sharing more about her mom, who was the only caretaker in her life. She didn't have a dad in her life, I don't believe. And her mom, she shares, was married 4 times, making it surprising that she had made it this far in her own marriage as a result of doing things different than her mom. Kyle then brings up her going over to Kathy's in a few days to Mauricio and Erika, and Erika's marriage and life comes up, and the troubles that in her life comes up, of course, where Kyle is saying it is a lot for Erika as things continue to come out publicly. And Mauricio then is kind of shocked. Erika and Tom had been married for 20 years. He didn't know it was that long. And Mauricio then says he hopes Erika is not involved. And Kyle says she hopes so too and does not want to be proven wrong. Not exactly consistent with what she's been saying either to Erika's face or to Sutton or whoever else behind Erika's back. But Not surprising from coming from Kyle at this point. It feels like that's kind of a pattern. But this scene ends with a kind of a playful banter between Mauricio and Kyle, where Mauricio was getting distracted by the food as Kyle was trying to give a nice toast to him, and repeats something she said earlier, and he kind of calls her out on that. And I think it was funny to see that. And they seem to have a pretty normal marriage. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, quick note on the scene. Let me know what you thought of Mauricio's setup for their anniversary. And would you recommend to me taking note from this? I know there's a lot of women that watch, so let me know if you think this is something. I know it's kind of extravagant, but I'm saying, should I be taking notes from this or not? Let me know what you think. All right. So now we are at Dorit's house. I'll get to your live chats in a second. We're at Dorit's house getting ready, where her son Jagger is trying to mess up her makeup with the lipstick. We have another Kyle getting ready call with her sister, this time where Kathy is distracted getting ready on the other end of the phone, and Garcelle is FaceTiming Sutton getting ready to confront Erika as she says to trust your own gut, even with your own friends being questionable. And that is where we go to a commercial, and after the commercial, oops, wrong way. After the commercial, we are now at Kathy's, where she shares she doesn't like people arriving early to her house, because that is when she does the final finishing touches and checks the bathrooms and checks all the things are perfect. And we see Rinna is actually the one who appears to break this rule. Don't know for sure if she actually arrived that early, but they wanted us to believe that, to be delayed in a little bit of greeting by the butlers. But then Dorit, Kyle, and Erika arrive before Crystal shows up in a more revealing outfit to compliments from the others as Sutton arrives, and Kathy finally meets her guests before Garcelle walks in to complete the group. Now, they all have drinks, as you see here, and appetizers delivered with white gloves on a silver platter, literally on a silver platter. As Rinna shares, again, she is drinking, and nothing that comes out of her mouth she is responsible for the rest of the night, which is becoming a theme of hers, just saying. And it appears to be, which we'll touch on next episode, it's next episode. It might be actually a strategic move of hers to say that. That's all I'm going to say. That's a preview of the next live stream. Make sure to come back at noon Pacific, which is a little bit after we end this live for that thought. But anyways, as the girls are getting seated, Sutton is being seated next to Erika. Anyone surprised? I think it was a strategic move. Some are saying that Kathy might be the MVP of the season just for seating them next to each other in this scene. But Sutton is seated. Erika is about to be seated. And Sutton decides to bring up what happened at the Rinna Beauty launch party in a way to ask if Erika is okay, as you see her standing over Sutton. And Erika responds saying, "I don't need to hear from you. You've made your position very clear." And Erika then walks away saying, "I don't want to talk to you, Sutton. I have enough problems. Your opinion of me does not matter." So she was very clear. Now the girls are a little bit shocked. So on her way to the other room, Erika says to Kathy, who she passes in the hall, "Oh, I'm just needing to use the restroom." And Kathy then arrives at the table saying, "What just happened?" Sutton then fills her in saying, "I just wanted to chit chat," and she didn't receive it. Not that anyone else would say things to her face, which is cool. Clearly Sutton doesn't think that it's that cool, and clearly doesn't care at this point, but she's realizing that she's kind of on her own at this point. But the food is now coming out. Another round of caviar toast, but this time with homemade vodka to pair with it. And Dorit then starts saying to Garcelle that she felt really bad about what happened at the Rinna Beauty launch party, and Kathy basically cuts off Dorit, helping out Garcelle a little bit, to which Garcelle thanks Kathy in her confessional for doing that. But later on, we'll find out that Kathy may have actually been better off, for her own sanity, letting Dorit continue talking. But now, the girls are all given there's this bell to ring at the table for the butler, I guess, to which 3 drinks in Rinna, is what I'm calling her, says that they should use them to intro and share the problems with another person they want to bring up in the group, starting with Sutton, to which Erika says, "Well, there isn't enough Lexapro in this world for this," which, brief note on this before we keep going. Erika referencing Lexapro again supports my theory from episode 1 of this season, where Erika mentioned the name of the depression medication, the same one, that she may have not been fishing for a sponsorship from that company, in my opinion. Just saying. Hold on 1 second. We'll see how that turns out. If any of you follow her on any social media, let me know if that's a thing yet, but I have a feeling something's up with that. Anyways, Sutton then shares how she wanted to talk to Erika, but was shut down. Erika seems to think she shut Sutton down politely, but we saw kind of a passive-aggressive tone from Erika, and Sutton says, "You haven't heard my opinion of you yet," as more girls are kind of chiming in and encouraging Sutton again to speak up again. As she says, "I have the bell." She's ringing it. Everyone's kind of over talking to her, and she's going, "I'm speaking," and Erika basically cuts everyone off and says, "I don't give a fuck what you have, Sutton." As Sutton is saying to Erika, "You have to stop speaking to me that way because it's getting a little weird." And Erika basically declines that demand. It's like, "No, I don't. I can speak to you however I want." So Erika then says, "Well, you need to stop speaking about me in my life because it does not impact you in any way." Sutton says, "I'm not talking about you anymore. They are." And that is when Sutton asks, "Would you like me to talk about you? Or would you like me to be quiet? Because you've told me to be quiet multiple times." Giving Sutton an in to address the comment, the Miss Small Town comment from the Rinna Beauty Party as derogatory in her eyes, saying that she is proud of what she and her husband had built together from the ground up in their quote-unquote small town. Now Erika asks, "Well, then how does my life impact that?" Sutton responds with, I thought it would, but it wasn't, or it hasn't." And then Erika again says, "You didn't have to go there on something that does not affect any one of you one bit." Now this is when Dorit steps in disagreement with Erika's statement that she just said, saying that every time an article is written, all of their names get dragged into the situation. It's just how it is. Erika is known for being on the show, and that has been the anchor to her catapulting the Erika Jayne name and whatnot. So it's just natural that they all get drug into things when one of them is implicated on something that's going to be shown on the show. And so Dorit says there is a worry that they could get dragged in for subpoenas in court and for them to be questioned on what they know. And so I think that is a fair point in my eyes from Dorit. And I think that's something you should care about, especially if you're on a show that's watched by a lot of people. So this leads to Erika saying that there will be a day where this is all behind her, and it will be a sweet day when she remembers who was with her and who was against her. Sutton then chimes in saying, "I'm not against you." And of course, Erika, in survival mode, from what I see at this point, is questioning is that anyone questioning her at all is probably going to go into the against her category, which we'll have more thoughts on that in a second. But Crystal tries to then minimize the situation, or try to diffuse, if not, or deflect, I don't know, by comparing the situation Erika is in to stars of her husband's movies being Me Too'd, basically being accused of assault or whatever, or misconduct, and them not being worried because it's the star of their movie, it's not them. A lot of people I know had some reactions to that comment from Crystal, basically dismissing both the B2 thing and these allegations. So don't know if she meant it to come out that way, but that whole conversation led to Garcelle asking, "Isn't it human nature to be curious and have a thought in your head about how this may affect your life?" And Erika says, "No, it is not." As Erika starts basically crying, as you see here, and Garcelle is trying to be kind and is trying to say to her, "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just trying to get you to understand what's going on." And Erika is just telling Garcelle to back off, and Garcelle is just trying to comfort her, but she's not treating Garcelle very nicely. Now, Dorit continues to say it is hard to stomach the allegations by these victims, as Erika is sitting there asking, basically, "Why are you all torturing me?" And she's kind of doing it in this, like, why are you all torturing me? Like, "Oh, I'm so emotional." But she's saying this looking at Dorit. She's going, "Dorit, look at me. Look at my fucking life." Kind of being like, "What do you think I'm doing? Like, do you think I want this and whatnot?" But anyway, after a commercial, we are back at the table, and I'll have my thoughts on this dinner so far in this episode in a few seconds, and I'll get to your chats. But Erika then asks, "If it breaks your heart so much, why are you still talking about this?" To which Lisa Rinna tries to pull a Kathy Hilton, but clearly doesn't go over how she probably thought it would. And she kind of says, "Well, if we can all just get to a love thy neighbor place, blah, blah, blah. And everyone kind of just cuts her off and says, no, we're not getting there. Even Erika says, I love you, Lisa, but that's bullshit, basically. And so Erika then says, every time I come to an event, you all kick the shit out of me for something I didn't do. I look to this table for support, and that's when Kyle is saying, we keep pushing people to talk to you because we want you to know what is being said behind your back. Again, Kyle is using this to deflect from her own two-facedness, in my opinion, as Sutton in her confessional said. So Sutton then brings up the dinner during the holidays at Kyle's house, saying, I did ask the tough questions, asking if your attorneys concocted the story for you, but Sutton says she has softened, but Kyle then calls her out on saying Sutton is the one wanting to confront Erika and calling the meetings with the girls, saying she thinks Erika has lied. So, Garcelle then makes a great point in her confessional, asking why are the girls, or Garcelle, sorry, makes a point in her confessional, asking why are the girls focusing on Sutton as their scapegoat when everyone in the group has had questions. Sutton then shares to Erika's face that the car accident story sounded like a lie, and that this is what Sutton was referring to when she said that Erika lied. So then Sutton asks, how can I believe everything you've said once this one lie comes out and there must be more? And she says that in her confessional as well. Now Erika then asks Sutton, and here's the face. What the fuck are you doing? I am not a liar. Do you know something about my life I do not? I'll go ahead and let you, or she said, I'll go head to head with you all fucking day. You have a lot of fucking nerve, as Sutton is saying, don't talk to me that way, trying to defuse the situation, as Erika then ends the episode saying, or what? Or what? Sutton responds, or nothing, Erika, or nothing. And Erika goes, exactly, in this face. Exactly, with that little, like, raised lip, which is pretty scary, I would say. It's pretty threatening. And then Erika says, so shut the fuck up. You have no idea what you're talking about. And that is basically how the episode ends, kind of on a cliffhanger. So there's a lot to unpack here. I know there was another episode already aired, and we're going to touch on that in about a little over an hour, but I want to touch on what we've seen in this episode so far, and then I'll get to your live chats. So there's a lot to unpack here. First, I disagree with Erika saying her problems don't affect Sutton's or anyone's lives in the group. As Dorit stated, because if that were true, no one in Erika's life would be distancing themselves from her outside the show. And now I'm glad Dorit stood up to her at this point in regards to that statement and agree with Garcelle, saying it is natural to question how these serious allegations could affect you as someone legally or societally connected to her. Now, I don't like the way Erika is treating the group in this scene. Clearly, Erika has had enough, and I get she feels cornered and by the girls, and every time they're in a group, it seems to come up, whatever she's doing. Hold on one second. I'm blurry now. Great. Things just keep happening. Actually, I'm going to finish this part, and then I will fix my blur. But I just think it is a bad situation all the way around. Of course, the victims have the worst, but everyone directly involved with it, whether it's the friend group or them or her, and us watching this unfold and having to deal and knowing what the victims are probably going through as well is kind of hard to watch as well. So everyone's having a hard time with this. Now, to me, Erika saying she thinks this doesn't affect anyone around her makes things worse, because it shows to me that she doesn't really care about those around her. And Erika seems to think that she is the only victim in this and only acknowledges the real victims when reminded or needing to take the heat off of herself. Now, I think she is a victim of blind loyalty to Tom, where her questions to him were shut down. And now she wants others to be victims of blind loyalty the way she was to Tom, but now to her, to be able to shut down their questions to her in the same way. So it seems every dinner lunch with Erika keeps getting more and more heated, and we will have to see where and when the peak hits. Maybe this is it. But until then, let's check the chat and let me fix the blur of my freaking face. I think I was standing too close or too far. I don't know. Actually, it looks fine now. I don't know what's going on. All right. Let's read your chats. Thank you so much for being patient with me. Thanks, Nastia. Appreciate it. Okay. So Nastia says, Erika has such a mafia mob boss mentality. She wants complete and blind loyalty. She doesn't have to answer any questions. Thinking for yourself makes you an enemy. It's black and white. That kind of blind loyalty is what got her in this situation in the first place. That's exactly what I said. So I guess we're on the same page here with Erika and kind of what we're seeing here. And clearly, I don't think it's an excuse. It's a reason. I think she's acting like this because she is in kind of that fight or flight mode. I think she knows things are about to go bad for her. So I think this is just her trying to grab at anything. And I have, I don't want to jump the gun too much. I have thoughts for the next episode that I already have written down. So we'll talk about that in the next one. But I have some theories on what's going on here. And so make sure to tune in. It'll be in about an hour. So in noon Pacific. So whatever time zone you're in. You can calculate that back, but we will then be caught up by the end of the day today, or in a few hours actually, with Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And I am aware that the first episode of the reunion is supposed to air the first week of October. I think it's October 6th. So that means we have about 3 more episodes. So I'll do episode 16 today, and then 17 will be this week, 18 the next week, and then 19 the week after. And then I don't know how many parts of a reunion we'll have. At least one, but I've heard they are filming, I think, this week. So we'll see kind of how that goes. And apparently it's probably going to be in person, so that'll be interesting. Not the Zoom reunion that we had last year. So let me know if you have any other last minute thoughts, and then we will wrap up here until the next live at noon. Thank you so much for powering through technical difficulties. If you're watching or listening to the replay, you probably won't even realize that there was technical difficulties because I'll cut it out. YouTube has a great feature where you can snip out portions of it. So hopefully the replay is a lot shorter than what you guys had to sit through here in the live. But I thank you so much for being here. And until noon, which is a little over an hour for the next live recap and react for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, I did have a video that I came out with on other topics this week. So if you want to check that out, you can. And until then, make sure to head to the comment section if you have any other thoughts wherever you are tuning in from. And with that said, I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.